Ladies and gentlemen, it is 7 o'clock, and at this moment I called Hamilton Wenham Regional School Committee meeting to order. Okay, and I invite you all to join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. Okay, I just want to make sure before we get started that Jen, can you hear me? Jen Carr? I don't think she can hear me.
Jen, can you hear me? Yep.
Yes. Yeah. Okay, good. Excellent. Before we get started, just want to let everyone know that this meeting is being recorded and also being live streamed on HWCam. We do have a Zoom link currently open, which is going to be open for citizen comments. We also have one member who is here virtually. Jen Carr is here virtually. And next up, we are going to have citizen comments. I'm going to start with anyone in the room. If you would like to make a comment, please approach the podium. Anyone who wants to make a comment, I ask that you give your name, spell your last name, please, and your address before you speak. And I ask you to keep your comments to 3 minutes and know that we're listening. We're really grateful for people that are willing to participate. Okay. Looks like we have someone here in the room who's ready to speak. Let's see, I actually didn't nominate a timers. Who's available to time? All right, Michelle Horgan, thank you. All right, so I'd ask you to keep your comments to 3 minutes, and please state your name and your address.
Thank you for hearing me out. My name is Mark Provost. I live at 162 Asbury Street. I've owned a health business in Hamilton and Wenham for 25 years, and I'm also a professor of health and well-being. And I've been up in front of you a few times now, and each time I come to you, I ask you nicely to reconsider this mask mandate. And I use pretty good logic. I tell you that on the box of all these masks that we're wearing, it says that they don't stop viruses. I give you Nobel laureates like Michael Levitt from Stanford University, and John Ioannidis, and John Oxford from Cambridge University. I give you comments how they say these are useless. You have 2 shots in you, maybe a booster, a 3rd shot. Do you really think that this is going to protect us, and especially our children who don't transmit it, who don't get infected at the rates? Not even close. But here's the troubling reason I'm here tonight, because I see the glassy eyes. I've been seeing them the 2 or 3 times I'm here looking at me. In that Michael Levitt, he has a great comment. He says, if you believe that masks work, you're either being played or getting paid. He said that about a year ago. The most brilliant man in immunology in the world. You're either being played or getting paid. And now I know the schools are getting paid. I didn't know that the last 2 times I spoke. Now I know about the American Rescue Plan of March 2021 and how much money the state of Massachusetts, along with all the states in the country, have gotten from the federal government. $1.8 billion in Massachusetts. And this is fact. Anybody can look it up. Please look up the American Rescue Plan. Massachusetts got 2 payments, March in May, like all the other states. $1.8 billion, but you need to be in compliance with the federal government. You need to mask our children or you lose the money. You need to practice social distancing. You need to talk about vaccines and have clinics in the schools. You need to practice contact tracing or you lose the money. I don't think any of you are getting paid very well. I'm not saying you're getting the money. I don't know. but you are literally selling our children's emotional, physical, psychological, and social well-being
30
for
seconds,
money.
Mr. Provost.
For money. We're prostituting our children. What are we doing? Empathy. They need to learn social cues, and we're putting masks on them. And it's all about money. American Rescue Plan. Please, everybody look it up. I spent 6 hours this weekend. I was horrified. You've been bribed. This is fraud. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I don't think we have anyone else here in person that would like to speak.
Does anyone online that would like to speak, raise your hand? We have one.
Okay, sounds like we have somebody online. Make sure they know to state their name and their address, and then we will listen.
Bringing one person in. Mr. Hebert, you should be all set.
Yeah, thank you very much. This is Mike Hebert from 96 Blueberry Lane. And why am I here? I'm here because I have to learn on this trip to Nashville how committees like this one work. I've spent a lifetime avoiding bureaucracies and committees, in turn trying to take my action to the voting booth, but I am starting to think that that is not enough. So I have to think, what is my role in this town? What can I do to help some change? And what kind of change am I talking about? Well, the things I'm talking about are things like last week when I saw that girl outside of Miles River suffering and struggling to breathe, having an asthmatic attack because the MIAA forces her to wear a mask on the basketball court. That was a real wake-up to watch her struggle. And I know that's MIAA, I know that's not Hamilton, but I know that Hamilton and a lot of you guys support this, and that's got me kind of worried. The next part was that the classrooms. A week ago on Monday, we had 18-degree weather, and the wisdom was to keep the windows open. And that's the way that the kids had to learn. And as they froze and asked the teacher to close those windows, they were denied. And that doesn't make a lot of sense to me either. The masks, if they slip under the nose, they get a warning, and then they get a trip to the principal's office. So if you don't know that rule, then you got to go down there. And if that doesn't, if that's not enough, you've got the school buses driving around with windows down. There's not a lot of common sense I am seeing here. Okay, I'm in Nashville right now. There's none of this nonsense. Okay, they're just living their lives. I haven't seen a mask in a day and a half. Up here in New England, it's on another level. So I'm looking to see where the adults. We are supposed to be in charge. We are the shepherds. What are we doing here? What are we doing? The last little bit is that the school system seems to be slipping. When I moved here with my family in 2016, this school was number 13, according to U.S. News and a host of other periodicals. They were flirting with the top 10. Now, the school is pushed up into the 30s. 40s are right around the corner. This is not what I signed up for. We moved here for the schools. The basics are lacking. There's no shortage of social justice from their books, English class, history, totally run over. It is social justice central. But as far as the basics are concerned, I'm not seeing it. And so I'm very concerned. I'm concerned about the handling of COVID, putting the kids in the cold, endless masks, and I'm concerned about the direction of the school in general. It is slipping. The district seems to be slipping. And so here I am. I have to speak up. I can't believe I'm speaking up from here from a business trip in Nashville.
30 seconds, Mr. Hebert, please.
Come up to the hotel room to do this. So I'm wrapping up on 3 minutes. I've said my piece. And that's all for now.
Thank you, Mr. Hebert.
Thank you. Do we have anybody else?
Anybody else would like to speak? Please raise your hand.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much for the comments. I'm not actually sure, Mr. Tracy, is the Zoom going to remain open? And
It's a webinar, so it will remain open.
Okay.
There's no ability
all
to
right, so tonight's a little bit different because we do have one member who is attending virtually. So I guess if you're on the Zoom, you can continue to watch it as a webinar, but you will no longer be able to, there won't be any way to participate. And again, it's also being live streamed on YouTube as always. Next, I'd like to take a moment. I'm going to ask David to speak in memory of John McWayne.
Great. Thanks, Dana. I'd like to take a brief moment to reflect on the life of John McWayne, who passed away December 22nd at the age of 81. A Fulbright scholar who earned his PhD in physics from MIT, John valued education and service, which is evident in his 15 years serving on the Hamilton-Wenham Regional School Committee. John's legacy to our district is felt every day, as he was instrumental in the building of the Miles River Middle School and the Hamilton-Wenham High School refurbishment 20 years ago. Personally, I've had the honor to call Mr. McWayne a family friend, as I was lucky enough to grow up with his 3 wonderful children, Katie, Sarah, and David, whom I went through the Hamilton-Wenham school system with, and continue to be very close with to this day.
It looks like Grayson raised her hand in the attendees.
When I first decided to run for school committee in 2016, John and his wife Jane phoned me to congratulate and support my candidacy and asked me for a candidate sign to put in their yard. I'm not exaggerating when I say that I drove up and down Woodbury Lane 50 times the next day in awe that my sign was outside Mr. McWayne's house. For the past 6 years, whenever I saw John, he'd ask me about current events within our district, expertly aware of the comings and goings of our schools, as if he were still sitting committee member. He loved Hamilton-Wenham and especially our schools. He was an inspiration to me and to so many in our community, and though he would be sorely missed by those who knew him best, his legacy will silently live on in our district for generations to come. Thank you, John, for your service. Hamilton-Wenham owes you a debt of gratitude.
Thank you, David. I really appreciate that. It's important to have that recognition. Eric, it seemed, I didn't know if there was, are we good on the Zoom? Are we having I wondered if we're having a technical Zoom issue or we're good?
Just with the microphones.
Okay.
Just muting and unmuting as we go.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Next up, we are, as we've been doing all year, we're going to do a brief review of a portion of the school committee protocols, and I'm going to turn it over to Anna.
Thank you, Dana. As elected members of the Hamilton-Wenham Regional School Committee, we, including the superintendent, accept the high honor and trust that has been placed in us to ensure that the students of the district receive the best education possible. To that end, we hereby commit to the following in the conduct of our business. Protocol 1. Members of the committee will make no independent commitments or take any independent actions that relate to the school district. When the school district members attend meetings of other committees or boards, they will speak as individuals. They may only speak for the committee when designated to represent the committee.
Thank you. While it may become repetitive, I think it's important to have those protocols front of mind whenever we're meeting, and I really appreciate your willingness to participate in that. Thank you. Okay, next up we have the consent agenda. I'm not sure whether, should we test out our remote, whether Jen can make that motion? Just to make sure we can hear you, Jen?
Jen, do you want to make the motion?
I couldn't hear anything because you muted it.
Yeah, we get.
Okay, so Jen, I'm gonna have Julia, who's our assistant secretary, make some motions. But I do want to make sure you can hear. Can you hear what's going on in the room?
I can, as long as the TV screen isn't muted,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. All right, Julia, I'm gonna ask you to make a motion on the consent agenda, please.
Should I ask if anyone wants to hold anything?
Oh, yes. See, I'm right on this. Okay. Does anyone have anything from the consent agenda they'd like to hold? Jen? Nope. Okay.
Okay. I move that the Hamilton-Wenham Regional School Committee accept the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Second by Michelle Horgan. Okay. All those in favor? That is 6 in favor. All those opposed? Oh, okay. Oh, I think you are correct. I actually believe you are correct. Thank you. All right, we're going to redo that. Okay, all those, let's see, so I guess I'll do a roll call vote. David?
Yes.
Julia?
Yes.
Jane is a yes. Michelle? Anna?
Yes.
Michelle?
Yes.
Jen?
Yes.
Okay, and the consent agenda, the motion passes. It is unanimous. Okay. All right, moving right along. Okay, new business. I wanted to this next item says discussion of school committee election procedures. The committee might notice that both of our town clerks have graciously agreed to be here in case we have questions. I have spent some time, we're really echoey now. I don't know. It sounds really echoey here. I don't know if that's other people hearing that. I don't know. Okay, well, it's okay. We'll see. If you guys can hear, that's fine. Okay. So I've spent some time with both of our town clerks trying to talk about election procedures. As you know, our process actually began on Monday, the 10th. We would have had this meeting last week were it not for our website issues. We would have had this meeting ahead of that date. But basically, we're going to try to streamline things a little bit this year. And I want to bring it to you. I want to be transparent with the committee and with the public. Our regional agreement, section 1, lays out the way that an election is run. It was written, I believe, in 1959, and it no longer, or it is now in conflict with state election law, and it's no longer really possible for us to follow both the law and section 1 of our regional agreement in terms of creating the election procedures. And that's been true for a while, but I spent some time with our town clerks trying to come up with the best possible way to hold an election in which everyone is gets an opportunity to participate. So basically, our general plan is for people to pick up election papers, nomination papers at their respective town halls. So if you live in Wenham, you would pick them up in Wenham. If you live in Hamilton, you would go to your town clerk, Corinne Kale, who's right here in Hamilton. If you live in Wenham, you would go to the Wenham town clerk, Trudy Reed, who's here, and you would get your papers. Then the town clerks will then give you all the information that you need in order to know. They give you election law information, open meeting law information, how you get your signatures, who's allowed to sign, all of that information. And as they get nominations or people that pull papers, that will be reported back to our district clerk, who is identified as Janelle. She would get that information. That we have learned from our town clerks. I learned in my meetings that information, who pulls papers, is public information, so that can be given out for public asks. The town clerks will then verify the signatures that are returned to them. And the part that's a little bit different is that they're going to do that, and then Janelle will have the opportunity to look at those signatures as well, express any concerns that she might have, challenge any signatures if she had a concern. And finally, once the papers are all filed, copies will be provided to us in the district so that we can also continue to keep those files. Does anyone have any questions? We have the town clerks here. It's a great opportunity if you have questions about those procedures. Michelle?
So that is different than has been interpreted as the way that the regional agreement has said in the past.
Correct.
And that's one thing. And if you read the procedures, there's like 2 procedures there. There's no green light here, by the way.
I know. I can hear Michelle because I'm sitting right next to her, but
It's not, there it goes. Okay. So this is not the way that we have done it before. what was I going to say? And there's also the situation that when you read them, they're super confusing because there's like dual processes in there. And this came up when the town meetings and the elections had to move. And it said that the school committee elections would be in May. And then Wenham interpreted that as, well, the school committee didn't do what you were supposed to do because you were supposed to hold it in May. And we were like, well, no, you were supposed to hold it in May, but you reneged on the deal. So now we're stuck with it being at your election time because we didn't have the ability to then call an election. So I feel like we've had discussion. I believe Trudy and I don't remember, maybe Jane were here before when we talked about the regional agreement and this being an issue. And we've had the discussion about, you know, how the process of like, the word isn't embargoing, but you know, in the past where we used to keep the tally of the vote secret until the other town had it is not legal anymore. So I would propose that we just fix this year, that we try to put together a group that would go through this part of the regional agreement and make it align with the law and a best practice, which is not getting your papers at the district office, then taking them over to the town clerk, you know, and then the town clerk's transmitting the voter list to the district secretary, who then looks at them but has no information really about them to determine. So I just feel like this is fine, but it isn't in alignment, and that we should fix it.
So just to make sure I understand what you're saying that what I heard you say is this is fine. What I'm interpreting that this procedure for the moment is going to be fine for the moment, but that what you would like to do is that when this comes around again next year, that we actually have adjusted the regional agreement.
Right.
Is that what you're saying?
I'm saying, yeah, that we should have a document that actually reflects the procedure, but we have a document that doesn't reflect this procedure, but this is the right procedure. So we should fix the document, not keep doing it wrong just because we have a piece of paper.
Okay. All right. Does anyone have any other, before we, does anyone have anything to relate to say to that, or questions for the town clerks? Okay. Michelle, is there a motion in there, you think?
I can make a motion.
Well,
Okay.
You don't have to. Oh, hold on one second. Let me make sure. Jen, can Jen hear me? I want to make sure. Jen, do you have any questions, Jen? Okay, great. Sorry.
All right, so I move that the Hamilton-Wenham School Committee vote to assign the review of the nominations and elections section of the regional agreement to the nominations committee to bring forward a proposed amendment to the April 2021 town meeting.
What?
Did I give
Did I hear you say
2022? I meant 2022.
Yeah. I have another one. Did you mean the nominations committee?
Did I say that?
Yeah.
Sure, that'd be great. But how about the negotiations committee? So I would move that the school committee vote to assign the task of rewriting the elections and nominations sections of the regional agreement to bring forward a amendment to the agreement to the upcoming town meeting, and that would be done by the negotiations committee. Did I cover everything?
I think so.
Yep.
All right. Do you have a second?
I'm going to second.
Second by Michelle Horgan. I'm going to open discussion. I'm going to say one thing first. I do know I have already shared with the committee that our legal counsel, Mark Terry, has shared with us that this revising the regional agreement may be very complicated. So I'm actually in agreement with this. I am also mindful that it is possible that negotiations would create something that it might be a more difficult task than we know. I'm just putting that out there, that is the advice that I've been given by our lawyer, that it might be more challenging than we know. Doesn't mean I'm not willing to take it on. I'm just putting that out there. Anna, you look like you had a question.
I do have a question. Does it have, I have a practical question, which is it feasible to get it done before the April town meetings, given all that's going on? And then two, does it have to be done before the town meetings? And if so, why? I'm not entirely sure why that would have to be.
Has to be
It does
ratified.
need to go to town meeting in order to get changed. So if we weren't to do it, it would take another year. So that,
Okay, so in order to do that, though, we'd have to have it done and ready before the warrants are finalized by the select boards, which would probably be earlier than April. So realistically, we might have, I don't know, 4 to 6 weeks to do this? Does that sound about right?
It's probably
it looks like
more like
we have a
8.
town clerk that might have an answer to that.
It might be
Trudy?
7.
No, thank you, Ann. I was going to say the same thing. If you're trying to get this done by the April town meeting, I don't have the exact dates in front of me, but I think Wenham's warrant is probably closing late February, early March.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know about Hamilton, so that's your time frame that you would be working in order to get that on town meeting warrant.
Okay.
And I can get the exact dates if you need them, but
Yeah, well, yeah, if we will see if we need it, but I don't think we, yeah. So I think from, I guess there, I appreciate you wording the warrant, the wording the motion, it does need to be worded in a very specific way. And at the same time, I wonder, like, can we be tasked with, assessing the task, right? Getting in and getting started on it and reporting back that if it becomes apparent that that the time is too short, doesn't mean we wouldn't have started to put the work in. I don't.
We assigned the policy on the flag to the policy committee, and it was supposed to be in September, and we're still in here now. So it seems like we don't necessarily have to hold ourselves to deadlines in motions.
Well, and I appreciate that, but I guess we're sort of acknowledging here up front that this, certainly might be that, that it's too difficult or too challenging to get a time frame. I personally, well, I'll wait till everyone has.
Well,
David.
So you have 2 guidelines, right, that theoretically you can merge, because we have what was originally put in place.
David, could you speak into the mic
And
a
then
little?
we have what was originally put in place, and then we have, the law that corresponds now. So, we can hand it off to our attorneys to basically do everything for us. So that's not the issue I really see. The timeline is not what I'm worried about. What I'm worried about is unilaterally moving on. I think that we could be opening a can of worms here. If, we know the town of Hamilton wants to go back and look at the regional agreement. And Wenham and we have stated that, at this time, we have no reason to go into the regional agreement to change anything. This changes that. And that is a much larger discussion. And with a lot more, say, dire consequences. So I am not necessarily in favor of this, because as all policies, the state law trumps our personal policy, so we will always be protected by that. I'd like to get a little bit of a clarification if we could unilaterally move and make this amendment without the support of either or both of the towns as we're changing the regional agreement.
Michelle, do you want, go ahead.
So I think we reviewed this a few meetings ago. The school committee is the only people who can make a suggestion to change the regional agreement, unless there's a petition by the citizens. So Dana has told me about this discussion with Mark Terry, and he says it's complicated, blah, blah, blah. And then I say, yeah, but in our regional agreement, there's a thing in there about having an operational audit, which was changing one thing through a vote of town meeting, and it totally went right by the DESE. And at that time, people were like, oh, don't worry about it, because the DESE is never going to approve it. They're never going to put it in the regional agreement. There was no question. It just went right in. Previous edits to this were also done solely by the school committee when they changed the number of people on the committee. And also when they updated the regional agreement, because it used to just say K to 12 and we had to change it to say pre-K to 12. It's always been managed by the school committee. I understand what you're saying, right? But we've had several meetings about this. Both towns, both boards, all the boards agreed that this was one thing that we all agreed on. So why don't we just take the win, we all agree on it, and fix it?
Michelle, I have this mask in front of my face because you can't see me smiling.
Right.
There was a reason I was directing this question directly at you.
Yeah.
Because I figured there was some sort of precedent, and I wanted to put it on the table to really end the conversation.
Yep.
So.
Thank you. Thank you. Any other questions, comment, discussion? Looks like we're ready to vote. Does Jen?
Is on.
Okay. All right.
Muted ourselves.
Okay. Are we ready to vote? All right. I guess we're doing a roll call. We're going to get good at it. All right. All right. Everybody clear on the motion? Yep.
And to be clear, it was tasking negotiations subcommittee.
Correct.
To work with it. And I'm assuming that the clerks would be they're not part of negotiations, but we would take our cues from what you need us to do to conform with the law.
Definitely
And-
expert witnesses, right?
Yes, absolutely. I think we would consult with our both town clerks and also with Mark Terry.
Yeah.
To comply with, with all election laws and to make this, okay. All right, I'm going to go this way. Michelle Horgan?
Yes.
Anna?
Yes.
Michelle?
Yes.
Dana's a yes. Julia?
Yes.
David?
Yes.
Jen?
Yes.
Okay. And the motion passes unanimously. Thank you. I'd like to thank both of our town clerks for dedicating the time to come and all the help that you've given me in this past, few weeks. I will say also I am grateful to our town clerks who both worked very hard in talking with me and working with me on trying to have this meeting when our website was down. I appreciate your consult. And unfortunately, we had to continue to postpone, but it was helpful to know that I had somebody to call, so thank you. Okay. Next, we have a vote on the Peru field trip. I'm going to turn that over to you, Eric.
Okay. I brought this forward for this meeting purposefully. There was this trip has already been approved at a school committee meeting, but I noticed in an email that I've attached as an exhibit that there was an expectation to review the trip, if you will, 30 days before the trip, and I didn't want to wait till then to have discussion with everything that's going on right now, so I figured at least bring it forward now. It was voted and approved at a previous meeting, as I said, but the contingencies are at that time, if you read through the email that chain that I had on here, the contingencies were traveling at a particular travel level. Peru is currently at a level 3 for travel, and World Strides generally doesn't travel on a 3 or a 4 to another country. In conversations with them, they are still planning to take this trip, take our kids on this trip. We have 32 families that have signed up and are still willing to go. So I thought it would be wise to put it on the agenda now to get it kind of out in the discussion and again, in conversations with World Strides, their plan, if things go as kind of have been happening with Omicron across the globe, as you know, that by that point in time, they feel like they'll be able to travel. Peru's generally a level 2. When I went, it was a level 2, and it wasn't for health reasons, but generally a level 2 travel zone. So right now, level 3, they're anticipating, they meaning World Strides, who sponsors this trip, are anticipating that it'll be down to an acceptable level by the time April rolls around when the trip is scheduled. This trip goes every 2 years, and then Kevin puts them in 2 years in advance, and as you know, this is probably her last trip as a member of the school department, so I want to just put this out there and be upfront and not wait till the last minute.
Okay, other questions? Anna?
So just so I'm clear, this was approved before COVID was a thing, is that right? Okay, so I guess my questions are, the travel level advisory, I think, is something to be, sorry? Yes, Michelle?
No, I was trying to remember. That was true.
Okay. So the travel level advisory is worrisome, and I think that's something we do need to pay attention to and not necessarily hope for the best, but I think we should potentially think about what happens if it doesn't drop again. My bigger concern is that it was approved pre-COVID, and now there are new protocols that might really affect things. The two that jump out at me from a safety standpoint is the effect on ratio if someone is sick on the program. So if you read carefully the World Strides paragraph about illness on program, it talks about isolating someone who's sick, which is all fine and well and good if everyone's an adult, but if you have a sick student that gets isolated, you also would have to isolate a chaperone, which would throw off the ratio. So I'm a little concerned about the just practicality of the ratio as it was originally approved, and I'm wondering if we need to rethink the ratio number, or what will happen if that does happen, and given the state of the world, I think that's a real possibility. So I'm a little concerned about our safety ratio. The other thing that's missing from this, and I'm not sure, I'd have to go back and look at the policy that we approved. I believe it was in form, I think it was JJI or something like that. I don't think it's been formally approved, but in light of what happened to the trip last year that got canceled, I'm wondering if we need to add some sort of explicit disclaimer that releases the district of all liability in the event that something doesn't work and someone loses money, because there was a lot of parent uprising that trip didn't go and they lost money and the company went bankrupt and all these things, and it was a really terrible experience. So I kind of feel like at this point I would feel a little better about continuing to greenlight this if we had an explicit release from those 32 families that said, we understand that if anything happens, the Hamilton-Wenham Regional School District is not responsible in any way whatsoever, which feels weird since it's a school-sponsored trip, and yet, I mean, I personally have a lot of reservations about this really working smoothly, so I almost feel like I'd like to see a release that they have to sign, making that more explicit.
Speak to that, just.
Yes, Eric?
I don't know the exact number, and I'll reach out to Kevin in the morning, but the issue that happened, I think it was Spain that got canceled, and that became a kind of a mess. And I think once that happened, Kevin Sano strongly encouraged everybody on this trip to get the insurance. You know, make sure you get the insurance, because there's no guarantees you get your money back unless you have the insurance. So she's made that clear, but I'll find out the number. I'm not positive exactly how many families out of the 32 took the insurance.
And then the question about the ratios, I think the ratio was 1 to 6. Is that something that needs to be revisited in light of what could happen? Or what if one of the chaperones gets sick?
So my experience was 2 members of World Strides plus all of our chaperones. And the year I went, we had several kids get sick, and they had to be, basically, they stayed in their hotel room, and the adults stayed with them in another hotel room, not in the same hotel room, but at the wherever place we were lodging at the time. And it's a little different in Peru. They're much smaller and cozier, but it's it was something that we kind of had worked into it while having the 2 people from World Strides with us plus ours. So there's actually 2 extra people on that trip with us. Just because it does happen, kids get sick. Either they drank water or ice or something, food poisoning, which was one of the things adventures we had, so.
So that happens under non-COVID
Correct.
scenarios.
Correct.
And on top of that, we have a COVID scenario. Okay.
Michelle?
You mentioned that the parents, families have signed a consent on this trip. Is it possible, is it appropriate for us to see it? Or I just want to, I guess I'd like to see what's in the consent, just so we've covered all our bases.
Sure, it's a contract with World Strides.
Okay.
It's similar to their previous ones, but I can pull that out. We have it from the
If it's
previous-
appropriate, so,
From the previous
okay,
meeting, that was when it was approved.
thank you.
David?
Yeah, actually, Anna touched on most of what I wanted to say, but I do think that, like Anna and Michelle said, that, we should be doing our diligence here. I too really want to greenlight this and try and get things back to as normal as possible. But we do want to learn from our mistakes, and,
Yep.
if it's an extra chaperone that, you never know who wants to head down to Peru in April. And, just the other things of just making sure that we can end up being clear. I know Kevin does not want to have to deal with what she had to deal with Spain again. So, I'm sure she's, dotting every I and crossing every T, but, just to make sure whatever scenario we could think of to help her, that's what we're doing. We're trying to get this trip to go and
Yep.
trying to think of ways that we can help in just assuring that it does.
I can go back to her and just say, these are some things we talked about, work those things through, so not a big deal. That's why I wanted to bring it up now, so that we're all clear that this was approved before, and I didn't want to be a surprise in March, just before the trip was going, so this is good.
So
Thank
can,
Michelle?
so the reason that this little tag was in there was at the time that we approved this, there were portions of Peru that were a level 3 due to violence. I'm not sure if that has changed. We were assured at that time that our students through World Strides would not be going to any of those places specifically, like it was, for lack of a better word, like a microclimate where the violence was happening. So that's all well and good. My issue with this is that once the students get there, there's currently no requirement to test to go into Peru, but there is a requirement to test to come back to the United States. So if one student or 5 students or all 3 adults test positive in Peru, they will not be allowed to leave. And I don't see a plan for what to do if that happens. And it doesn't mean I won't support it, but right now,
Yep.
Without that plan, I will make a motion in March that we cancel the trip because I don't feel confident that we have a plan.
Yep.
And we should have a plan.
Okay.
And we can have a plan. We just need to
Definitely.
get it down in writing. And then I will say, having signed one of these forms before, there was a disclaimer on there that said, should you choose not to get this insurance, you are liable. So people have signed it, whether or not they read it or just signed it, you can't really say. So I think it is important always to put that in there. And then I'll say, like a lot of you know, my child just went on a plane as, a college student to a foreign country where he's now going to live. So, I'm not opposed to kids getting out in the world and doing things during COVID. I just want to be sure there's a plan. And there was no reason to have a plan. There is a reason to have a plan now.
Sure.
Anna?
Well, that's sort of I think those are those logistical things that I'm a little lacking on in, for example, I guess I'm with Michelle. It's sort of like I don't want to kill it, but I also, as someone who does logistics, like the chaperone in transit is a problem, the return testing, and all they've said is they'll be arranged by World Strides. But, without knowing what's happening there, what if they can't get the test? There are just so many variables that I feel like are not, to some degree, we can't answer them at all. Maybe they're unanswerable, but I also feel like if we don't at least consider or try to get, maybe we can get more detail from World Strides. Could they expand upon not just arrange, like where are you going to get it arranged, and do you have a backup plan? And then all of the concerns about chaperones we've talked about. I guess I don't want to kill it, but I also would love to wait and see till we get a little closer what's going on the ground there. And I'd like to see their plan built out more, and I agree completely. I'd like to see that consent form, and maybe have council look at it and see if there's something else we need to specifically add that covers us. It sounds like it's there, but all of this makes me nervous, and yet I'm still willing to entertain it.
And I would just add, there have, I know, been situations where people have gone on foreign trips and a chaperone got sick.
Yep.
So, but it was only one, and my concern here is like, this is a disease that they could all go down at once,
Right.
and so we just want to be careful about it.
Yep.
It's not a disease, I take that back. It's a virus. It's a virus.
All right. Other questions?
Do we need to take a vote on this in some way, or is it just advisory?
No,
Okay.
Not now. I mean,
we got to that point tonight, we could have, but there was no intention to re-vote. It was more of, I needed to know your feedback so that I can go back to Kevin and take care of whatever business we need to take care of and bring it back to the committee.
right.
Because we literally can vote to stop this trip. Even after they get on the plane, we can vote to make them come back, right?
Right, and
It's like I think Eric is saying, I wanted an indication that you weren't thinking about voting to just cancel it, and I think you've gotten that, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
and I will say the reason it says vote on the agenda is anytime I anticipate that there could be a vote, I want to put it on the agenda just so that people are aware. We can't always predict it, but we do the best we can. Okay, are we ready to move on?
We are.
Okay. Next up, we have Eric, Student Choice Count Report.
Thank you. This is our annual school choice counts. And generally, we bring this forward annually for a meeting to look at counts, look at numbers, see what the principals are saying about space. And then we'll have our hearing next meeting on the 20th, and then make the vote to either continue with school choice or not. That's a policy requirement, also a state law requirement to be done by June 1st. So the numbers here are what we're currently holding for school choice students in the district. And the middle school is really looking at probably only grades 7 and 8. There is a sizable program coming up, language-based group coming up from 5th grade to 6th grade that they're going to have to create small class sizes for. So that will take up some of their opportunity to be able to fit other kids. So they're not recommending 6th grade. And then at the high school, generally grade 9 because of the transition loss from 8th to 9th. Brian's anticipating at least 15 seats open, and that's what we've been running generally. And just so you have an idea, last year we had 28 people sign up for the 9th grade, and we went through the entire list and offered all the seats, and we only have 13. We had 15 originally. It was actually a set of twins, and they dropped off in August just before school started, so we're at 13. So it took all 28 to get to that number last year, so we don't know what that will look like this year. But essentially all the committee needs to do is vote to participate in school choice or not when the time comes. But this is an opportunity for look at numbers and any discussion that you want to have.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions? Anna?
Thanks, Dana. So are you saying that for the high school, we would only open it for grade 9, or would it be open to all the grades of the high school?
So essentially, I would just say vote to either participate in school choice or not, and allow the principals to manage their grade levels. I think that's the best way to do it, because if you have 2 seats open up in grade 10, it gives kids opportunity.
Yeah, okay.
Yep.
I just wanted to clarify the inclusion of specifically grade 9, which was a little unclear, so that's helpful.
We go through that language discussion every year. So,
Yeah, because
I
sometimes
have
you
a
might bring
question.
siblings. You know what I mean? A ninth
Yeah.
grader might come and they're like, oh, well, if I'm gonna have to schlep all over, I may as well take the 10th grader too. You know.
Any other questions? Julia?
This might actually be really a silly question, but there's 20 school choice students in 10th grade. So when you say 15 in 11th, that 20 is included, and it's 15 new students? So,
So you're looking at 10th grade, there's 20
yeah,
kids
so you
in the
anticipate
10th
like a drop off of 5?
I don't know, this is what's current.
No. Oh, this is what's currently
That's
happening?
what's currently
Okay, I
in
thought
the,
this was, like,
in
predicted.
each grade.
Okay,
So in that 10th grade year, 2 years ago, they had more spots available.
okay.
This is what's about to drop off, that 19.
Yeah, it's just
So
interesting.
graduation, that's gonna
Okay.
drop off.
Okay.
Okay. Other questions? Okay. And I think that is our next, I believe that's our next meeting. We'll have a hearing and then a vote.
Yes,
Yeah.
20th.
Okay. Okay, next up is I don't know that we have a lot to say about it. Do we, Eric, are you going to speak to the annual report?
There's not a lot to say about it. As a superintendent, I'm a member of the board of the consortium. Had the pleasure to meet all kinds of new people and get acquainted with them at a different level than as a high school principal. This annual report is required to just be presented to the school committee. This is their most recent, which happens to be 2021. We currently have, just so people are aware, 8 students involved in the consortium. One will age out January 22nd, and then one is a cost share with another community. So they also, we meet regularly. We meet probably every other month now to go through issues. They are working on expanding their building and improving their building where the main consortium building is. So that's a unique opportunity for them to get a little more growth. So we have been at the board level talking with Fran Rosenberg about the lease agreement. There's an opportunity for them to rewrite their lease in lieu of renovations and things like that. So they're looking to kind of grow and expand and rebuild their building, which should give them some more space to operate as well. So all is good, nothing out of the ordinary, but it's just a requirement to present it each year.
Okay. Thank you. Anybody have any questions? Anna?
It's just more of an observation on the demographic study. The race and ethnicity tracks a little bit higher than is true for Essex County overall, but I'm surprised by the gender balance. Is there any, I'm not really questioning it, but I'm surprised to see 75% or 76% male and 24% female. Is there any insight as to why that's happening? Because that is out of alignment with other enrollment data.
Yeah, it's a little bit different because there are multiple programs there. So it really depends on the programs kids are placed in. So if it's an IEP program that's specific to a particular disability or something that's happening with a student, there's really not a control of, it's going to be more males than females. If you look at the high school portion, which is recovery school, they don't necessarily have to have an IEP to go there. So there's really no driving force that says, all these males on IEPs have to go to this program.
No, I understand that. It's just, it's an anomaly. I mean, it's
unusual anomaly, yeah.
Yeah, I'd be curious to know. That's interesting to me. And unusual, so.
Okay. Other questions? Okay. All right. All right, next up, moving on to finance and operations.
It's gonna be Stacy.
All right, I think Stacy is going to present to us.
Which,
Airplay is Bucher Rover, sorry.
Bucher mobile line?
Rover, yeah,
Oh, Rover.
8706.
Good evening, and thank you for having me. So I am here to present on the student services budget areas for the FY23 budget. First of all, before I start with this, I do want to thank all of our student services staff for their time and dedication to our students. I want to thank our teachers, our teaching assistants, our occupational therapists, our speech and language therapists, our physical therapists, our nurses, our counselors, our BCBA, who is new to our school district this year, Jen Hogan-Cayley, Paige Mancini, who oversees our Early Childhood Partners CFCE grant activities, our L tutors, who don't get enough kudos, I think, from us, but Lorraine Miller and Emily James, and then our administrative assistants in the office, and of course our coordinators. Maureen Smith is here. She's our preschool and elementary special education coordinator, and then Ryan Roth is our secondary special education coordinator. So I want to thank all of them for all of their hard work. Okay. So I'm just going to start by talking about our ongoing return on investments. Since I've been in the district, we've made several programming changes. We've asked for staff, we've reallocated staff. So back beginning in FY19, we had asked for a language-based program to be established at the high school. With that program, we had an increase of 1.0 FTE. That was a new staff to the district. We also had asked for a therapeutic learning center at the high school to support our students with social and emotional needs. And we did reallocate an FTE, so there was no net gain in the budget at that time. And then we also asked for a new staff member, 1.0 FTE, for an intensive learning academic support program. And as you can see over the years from FY19 to FY22, between those three programs, we have supported numbers of students each year. Successfully, I'd like to say. And with that, I do want to give a bit of kudos to our language-based program at the high school. David Vailing is the lead teacher in that program, and he shared with me some information that I thought that would be great to share tonight. It shows the hard work and dedication not only of our language-based staff, but also the students. And I'm going to list off, we have 6 seniors this year graduating, and I'd like to list off the college acceptances between these students at this time. Colby Sawyer College for the nursing program, Curry College, Mitchell College, Massachusetts College of Liberal Arts, University of Southern Maine, Regis College, the Young School of Nursing, Loyola University in Chicago, Southern Maine Community College, University of Maine, Coastal Carolina, St. Anselm College, Lesley University, Westfield State University, High Point University, UMass Boston College of Nursing and Health Sciences, Salve Regina, University of Rhode Island, University of Denver, Merrimack College, Quinnipiac College, Hobart College, UNH, DePaul University, and Marquette University. So I think that's a great accomplishment for our students in that program. One student's made her choice of Colby Sawyer for nursing, but the rest are still making their final decisions. So, okay. At the middle school, as we moved there, we had created a social emotional behavioral support program back in FY19. We had reallocated an FTE, and these are our numbers of students supported through the program. We started low, but needed the program based on student needs at that time, and it has grown. This program also, these are students on IEPs. The program does also support students not on IEPs as needed. So just want to make that clear too. And then last year we added this year actually, and last year when we came for budget requests, we added for this year a reading specialist to be shared at the high school and middle school. So we now currently have 2 reading specialists at the secondary level, and they are servicing 35 students currently between the 2 of them. At the elementary level, back in FY19, we expanded our language-based program and added a special education teacher to the program. This was a reallocated FTE. Then back in FY21 or 20, I always get the years confused, we also added another teacher to the program, and as you can see, that was FY21. As you can see, we've supported a number of students at the elementary level. These are typically students in grades 3 through 5 that are accessing our language-based program. Okay. We also added, and we were able to hire for this year, a BCBA that has helped us in the reduction of contracted services for BCBA supports. But more importantly, this person has been able to provide ongoing consultation to our staff. Our BCBA has been in the classroom modeling for staff and providing behavioral support, helping to develop behavior plans for students, and working individually with students as needed. What this has created is scheduling flexibility, having our own person. So when we need her for an issue, she's available. When we were contracting, we were limited in the hours we had for a contracted provider. So we're providing more consistency, not only to our general education staff, but also our special education staff and our special education programs. The beginning of the year, Ms. Cayley spent a lot of time helping to acclimate a lot of our kindergartners back into school and supporting the teachers with kind of behavioral supports and instructional models in the classroom. So when we look at the FY23 budget, we had a lot of asks, but here's what the budget and our asks are allowing us to do. We have asked for a 1.0 FTE ESL teacher for our ELL programming in the district. Although it's a 1.0 FTE, it's a net of 0.67 because we are reducing by an L tutor. We have 3 L tutor positions in the district. I have actually only been able to fulfill 2 of those positions. We've not been able to hire for the 3rd. In creating this position, we are going to be able to increase our abilities to provide cross-grade instructional groupings to match our L students' language levels, which is really important. We haven't been able to do that. Also, more importantly, it's going to help us enhance our abilities to collaborate with classroom teachers and provide consultative services, modeling, and professional development for our staff, which is truly needed. So overall, it's going to improve on our supports and services to our L designated students in the district. And we have students currently across elementary school levels. There are at Bucher, but multiple grade levels, and then we have students at the middle school right now. My ask also was for a 0.6 FTE out of district team chairperson. We lost that position 2 years ago, and it would be hugely helpful in our department. We need this person to support facilitation of out-of-district team meetings. We have multiple schools across Massachusetts and one in New Hampshire where students are attending. So we need help with that. This will allow for consistency in the meeting monitoring obligations. Well, meetings and monitoring obligations, we're required to monitor all of our students that are in out-of-district programs. The monitoring includes site visits. It includes review of all the documentation that comes into us, progress reports, behavioral plans, data sheets and forms, looking at report cards and transcripts. So there's a lot of work that goes into that. And so it's also, the important piece too is supporting facilitation of any district team meetings as well can help it. So just looking for 0.6. The other thing this budget will help us do is we are going to be reallocating 1.0 FTE of our elementary language-based program teachers to the Miles River Middle School. As Mr. Tracy had mentioned a little bit ago, there's an increase in students going up to the middle school. We have 10 language-based students that are moving from 5th grade to 6th grade next year, so we need to shift that staff member up to support those students and their programming. And so the focus is, again, ensuring for our continued high-quality language-based programs and meeting the language-based population. We are also asking for, in this FY23 budget, is allowing us to do, is to add a 1.0 FTE school counselor / social worker at the middle school and the high school. So again, with this additional person, we'll be able to increase our abilities to provide mental health and social emotional supports to students. This person will focus on transition from 8th to 9th grade for students. And it's going to enhance our abilities to collaborate with classroom teachers and provide consultative services to them as well. Within this budget, we are also reallocating some positions. So every year we look at our student needs and we try to shift our staff as needed to support our students. So we will be reallocating some teaching assistant positions. 2 of them from the elementary will go up to the middle school intensive learning academic skills program. And then 1 FTE is going to Cutler. And again, as we look at the budget and we move forward, we always continue to look at how we can be conservative in our budgeting and spending. So we do review student populations and staffing needs on a regular basis. We look at reallocation of funds, but also staffing to meet our needs. And then we look at how we can control expenditures. Ongoing challenges and unmet needs. I have quite a few here, I'm sorry. One of them is our special education population has increased 3% over the last 5 years, and that's an overall average. There are years where we've had higher increases and lower increases, but right now it's a 3% increase. So 29% of our eligible students have moderate needs, and that typically lands about 6 to 14 hours a week of specialized instructional supports. And 24% of our students are high needs. So that's 15 hours or more a week of specialized services or supports. And currently, we have a lack of contingencies to address the physical impact of unanticipated high needs students. So if we have a high needs student come in to the district, we don't have a lot of flexibility in providing the supports, whether they need to happen in district or it needs to happen out of district. Meeting the mental health and social, emotional, and behavioral needs of our students, it's always kind of, it feels like it's always a challenge, and sometimes it feels like it's an unmet need. I gave an example here of just our hospitalizations. So in FY21, we had 18 instances of hospitalizations, and this is a combination of inpatient or partial hospitalizations. That equates to 13 students. So we do have students who are hospitalized multiple times throughout a school year. This year, currently, when I did the data up to December 21st, we had 9 instances of hospitalizations, and that equated to 8 students. That has increased to 11 instances and 10 students. So we've had an increase just in the past few weeks. Another challenge, it's always a challenge in special education, is the volatility of special education. we're always working to try and balance projections with where we land with actuals, and that can be really tricky. It's been more tricky in the past 2 years with COVID and the impact of COVID on our budget. Changes in student needs that can shift and create challenges as well in our programming. Shifts in programming needs as well, and how we balance out our staffing. And then there's always the unknowns. Move-ins are the biggest challenge. School choice, that adds to our population as well. Overall special education costs, that's always a challenge. Our contracted services each year do increase in terms of what we're charged, and sometimes in what our needs are. Out-of-district tuitions, right now it's estimated at 2.54% increase for FY23, so that's what we've budgeted with. Transportation costs have increased over the past 2 years. And then our legal costs. Our legal costs can ebb and flow depending on where we are with our standing with any legal issues that come up. Okay. Space and facilities is always a challenge in this district. It impacts how we think about program development and then how we think about program expansion or restructuring. There's lots of things we'd like to do with our program spaces, but we're limited on what we can do. Substitute coverage is another concern and challenge, and more so now in the time of COVID. Our teaching assistants are used quite frequently for classroom coverage and also lunch and recess supervision, so that's taking away from time with students. And then also another piece that has been a challenge since I've been here is having the opportunities for our teaching assistants to participate in all of our professional development that teachers are being provided with. They're working with our students too, and because of the way their work year is planned out, they don't get the opportunity to participate in all of those opportunities. And then having adequate time for consultation and collaboration with the special education liaisons regarding the students they're supporting in the classroom are also challenges, trying to find that time and adequate time to do that. And that is my presentation.
Thank you, Stacy.
You're welcome. Are there any questions?
Yeah. Does anyone have any questions? Anna?
I feel like I always raise my hand so fast. First of all, Stacy and Marie and Ryan and everyone who worked on this, thank you so much. It's really, it's helpful. I like the way you've laid it out. This is more of a, I guess, a longer term question. With the shift to higher FTE numbers, and I'm specifically looking at the 1.0 as opposed to tutors for ESL, for example, and I'm happy to see the BCBA was filled because I know that was vacant for a while. Are you finding that that transition to larger FTE numbers is yielding an easier path to filling those positions so they don't remain vacant?
Yes, I will tell you our ELE program has been a frustration for me since I came in the district because of the structure the district has had. Our L tutors are limited to 19.5 hours a week. So we're talking licensed teachers who are limited in their time, but also the pay they're receiving is not even close to what teachers are getting.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a challenge to fill that position. I believe that being able to hire a full-time teacher is going to be huge for our program. I still value the L tutors, the 2 tutors we have worked really hard, but it's not enough for our students.
Okay. And then the other question I sort of had is the volatility. I'm really glad you used that word. Is there something, obviously it's not in, this year's budget is sort of baked, but the idea of having both a reserve fund or in terms of coverage, it does seem like the teachers are spread so incredibly thin in every building, in every place. And I know that we've had volunteers doing everything from serving lunch to health. I mean, I guess I'm thinking, since this is such a fragile population that in future years, do we want to start to think about building in, an additional true like floating TA who might have some special education background that could go anywhere? I guess it troubles me that we're so thin, and it troubles me to hear you say that you don't have a reserve. So if we do get a student who comes in who really has high needs, legally we're obliged to serve them, and yet we're not really planning for that contingency. So that worries me, because I feel like that could very easily, if we were to budget for it, we could offset costs. But if we haven't budgeted for it, we move forward, then in a future year, we might be hit with a huge out-of-district cost that perhaps could have been somewhat preventable. So I guess I want to affirm, I like the way you're thinking about it, and as a committee looking at that, I feel like this is an area of growth that I would like to support. I also will just say that I love seeing the social worker there, and I know that that's being funded by a grant this year, I want to say, but to me, that's a huge benefit to the district, especially as we're all recovering from COVID and the mental health side of it. So I think this looks great, and I'm really pleased to see it, and good job, everybody.
Thank you. I do want to clarify, this social worker in here is separate. There is a social worker we added for this year, and that will continue for next year. That is funded through the ESSER grant, and that position is mainly focused at Winthrop.
Okay.
But is there to support the district. But yes, so a luxury for next year is we'll have 2 extra counselors in the district that we have not had. One at the secondary, and then our one at the middle school, the elementary.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Michelle?
Your button, Michelle.
Oh, yeah. Do you want to use mine?
It looks green. Is it on?
I don't know what's going on with it. So you talk about the increase in out of district. Is that the cost or the number of students?
The
Says out of district-
2.54% is the tuition costs.
Okay,
Yeah.
and so how many students will that support?
We have budgeted for next year 45 out of district students, and that is with our known students and potential projected students.
Okay, and what is our projection number?
It's 45.
Okay, so what is the total number that we have out right now?
Oh, currently, right now,
Yep.
we have 45 out, and it sounds
Okay.
weird having an equal
Yep.
number, but between aging out and
Yep.
graduating, the numbers fluctuate.
Okay, and how many EL students do we have?
We currently have 14. We started the year with 16.
Okay. And so when you talk about, and this may be a Vinnie question too, but when you talk about not having a reserve, and I feel like I've heard this before, that if a student were to move in, say, in March, we're not responsible for paying for their out-of-district placement until like a year later. Is that right?
It's in April, so March, we're still responsible for the upcoming, but also that is for private day and residential. If a student who is attending a consortium program moves in, it's an automatic, we start paying.
Okay. And don't we have a circuit breaker balance? So isn't that our reserve fund for their?
If we had to, yes.
If we had to, yeah.
Okay.
But there's also needs beyond, it's not just the out-of-district, if other expenses come up in terms of students, if our contracted services increase based on student needs for services, if we all of a sudden need some piece of equipment for a student, that's a high-cost piece of equipment.
And then you talk about the hospitalizations. How does hospitalizations affect our budget?
We are responsible for home hospital tutoring. So students who are out of school for a certain period of time and are restricted to the home or the hospital due to medical needs, we pay for tutoring.
And so is that the situation with those students this year?
For some, it depends on their length of time out of school. Some stays and hospitalizations are fairly short.
Yeah.
Others are much longer.
Thanks.
Michelle Horgan?
Hi, Stacy.
Hi.
Is it safe to say, and this might be obvious, but the money we invested in the high school program it's coming back now, since we see the numbers of 35, 32, that we're benefiting from that investment that we made how many years ago?
Back in FY19 was the start of it. Yes.
Okay, that's great. Thank you.
Okay, I have a quick question, if nobody else does. I just wanted to, near the bottom there about the professional development, I just wanted to, I thought, and maybe this is a question for Vinny, I thought that we had in the proposed budget, wasn't there something for TAs to be able to attend professional development, is that correct?
Correct. It's not the full amount that teachers have right now, but it is moving in that direction.
But it's more than they were getting before?
Yes.
Okay. Right.
Originally, TAs weren't participating on Wednesday afternoons, and it's important that they work with their classroom teachers, and that's part of the shift that we're making to try and get them paid so they're there and involved.
Good, yeah, no, thank you for clarifying.
Yes, well, actually, they did used to participate, but
They weren't getting
before
paid.
your time,
Yeah.
there was a need to cut the budget, and that's where it happened. So every time we have to cut the budget to meet the needs of some other group or some other need, it's a sacrifice, and it takes a long time to get it back.
Okay, anybody else? Okay, thank you, Stacy.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Okay, next up, we have the tentative budget presentation.
Yeah.
Never gets old.
I know, I always appreciate it.
Okay, so tonight we're here to wrap up the final presentation of the superintendent's FY23 tentative budget recommendation. So just to recap here for a second, back in October, I started the budget process. Over the months of November and December, you saw me present on the budget mostly in DESI form, throughout DAC form. So this was the 5 building principals, Craig Genualdo for athletics, Tom Geary for building maintenance and operations, Alan Topier for technology. Tonight you heard from Stacy for student services, and then I'm gonna briefly wrap up the DAC presentations and talk about the changes in central office as well as the changes in fringe benefits. Then we're just gonna briefly run through the assessment calculation again, and then wrap up with the vote on the tentative budget, and then a brief timeline for the upcoming events. So just to jump into it, the major changes we're seeing in the central office DAC year over year, just to start off, is the reduction. The biggest difference you see when you walk in the business office part is the reduction of a 1.0 curriculum administrative assistant. This was offset briefly by a 0.77 family community engagement liaison. The net result of this was a reduction of roughly /23 FTEs. We kind of shared the curriculum administrative assistant with the curriculum office and the business office, so I refer to them as being a member of the business office. The next item is a reduction of an ELL tutor that Stacy briefly mentioned a moment ago. In replace of that, as she mentioned, we are adding in a 1.0 ESL teacher. The net result of this will be an increase of approximately 0.6 FTEs. The next change year over year relates to our substitute rate increase. Again, Stacy mentioned earlier that we're having a hard time attracting substitutes. One of the reasons we believe is because of the rate. When you look at all the Cape Ann schools, we're kind of on the lower end of our substitute rate. Currently, we pay $100 per day. We're asking to increase this to about $110 a day. This will put us right in the middle of our competitors in the region. In addition, we're asking to reinstate part of the payroll clerk position that was eliminated during FY21. It was a 1.0 position, but we believe we can make it happen with a 0.6. To offset some of that, we have reduced part of our district treasurer position, approximately equivalent to a 0.2 FTE, to help alleviate some of that budget that's coming back with the payroll clerk. In addition, we are requesting to change our elementary director of teaching and learning and increase her by approximately 0.3 FTEs. And transfer that position from an elementary director of teaching and learning into a district-wide director of teaching and learning. To offset that increase, we are reducing our secondary director of teaching and learning because we happen to make him our superintendent. This will reduce us by approximately 0.5 FTEs. In addition, we're anticipating a rate increase on our general ed as well as our special ed transportation costs. In addition, we're asking to amp up our security around technology. You heard Alan speak to this, I believe, right before Christmas break. In addition, we're asking for a small increase in our food service match. The idea behind this is before COVID broke out, our food service department was running a deficit every year, approximately somewhere between $50,000 and $80,000 a year. This year, that doesn't look like it's going to happen, but that's because the federal government is now picking up the bill for all of the lunches, but we are anticipating that that will stop at the end of this year, and the need for more funds in FY23 will come back. The next item is an increased need for school committee minutes taking. And then lastly, we are asking to increase our L tutor rate. Stacy spoke about this a minute ago, and today while I was reviewing this, I went back and looked through our accounting system just so I could get it right, and the ELL tutors have not had a COLA or a rate increase since at least 2012. So the past 10 years, they have not received a single rate increase, so we are asking that we fix that adjustment next year. So overall, these are all the major changes within the central office stack. The net result is going to be an increase of approximately 6 FTEs, which is the equivalent of roughly $260,000. 0.6 FTEs, roughly $264,000 or 7.5%. You can ask me, yep.
What is an ESL teacher?
English second.
English is a second language.
Should be just an EL.
About ELL tutors and ESL teacher. So it would be helpful if we could use the same acronym in the same type of program going
Yes.
forward. Just, I don't care what you pick, but just
Pick one of them.
Yep.
The next and final DAC is our benefits and fixed charges. There is not as many changes as the central office DAC as you just saw, but in terms of the dollar amount, there is. As we've talked about this in depth this year, the biggest cause of this is our OPEB. We're asking to contribute approximately an additional $2 million next year. This obviously has to do with the E&D offset of last year. In addition to that, there is the $50,000, which is our normal increased funding schedule that we agreed to last year, trying to keep the normal increase from year over year. And I just broke it out that way so you could see it. So overall, we'll be contributing approximately $2,050,000 more in OPEB next year for a total annual contribution next year of $2,150,000, because we have the original $100,000 this year. The next major item is a placeholder increase for our health insurance premium rate, as well as a small adjustment to the enrollment that we're seeing within our employees electing health insurance. The next item is an anticipated Essex County retirement appropriation placeholder of approximately $86,000. Just to keep it fully transparent, when I started developing this presentation, we had not received the letter from Essex County that tells us our appropriation for next year. So in order to get the presentation in on time, I moved forward with the budgeted placeholder that I anticipated at the time. We've now received that letter, and I can report to you that it is much lower than what I anticipated. So between now and the final budget, I will adjust that number down, and overall, it'll bring the final budget down before the final presentation. The next major item is our workers' comp and property liability insurance. We're seeing a pretty good increase on this line. I believe it's somewhere around 13%. I met with our insurance company, and the major driver behind this, and I might have mentioned it before, is we put in a claim at the Winthrop School, I believe 2 years ago, for the sprinklers freezing up, and it kind of destroyed some property over there. So ultimately, insurance companies always make their money back. So they covered it, but they're going to increase our insurance rates for the next 3 years. We're seeing that now. The next item is an increase in our 403B match. We're currently in the first year of our new teacher's contract. Within that contract, year 2, they negotiated a 14% increase to the district 403B match. So I increased that line the exact same percentage as the teacher's contract rate increase. The next item is a reduction to our sick day buyback. So what happens here is for every retirement application we receive, we budget the exact amount to pay that teacher at the end of the year, whatever we owe them in sick day buyback. In FY22, I believe we had 5 or 6 retirees. For FY23, we have 3, so we're reducing that line item down to the actual retirements that were submitted. Lastly is just a small reduction in our unemployment costs, as last year we had a lot of layoffs, so with those going away, we can reduce that line item. Overall, for the benefits and fixed charges DAC, we're not seeing any increases in FTEs, but we are seeing a dollar value increase of roughly $2.3 million, or roughly 40%, which again has everything to do with the increase in OPEB. So that kind of does it for the DAC portion of the presentation. I can stop and answer any questions on the central office or the fringe benefits, or I can just kind of roll through it and go through the kind of mile-high viewpoint of the budget. Right now, I'm just going to run through what it does for us as a district-wide perspective, and then just run through the assessment calculation again, if nobody has any questions. Okay. So this budget does a lot for us in my mind. One of the biggest things, obviously, is it maintains level services. I, off the top of my head, can't label one program that is seeing a reduction in this budget. Yes, we're moving things around. We may have reduced an ELL tutor, but we amplified it with an ELL teacher. So there is no major program that is seeing a reduction. So that's obviously the biggest thing, but on top of that, this budget is allowing us to make a lot of huge incremental investments across the district. Just to label some of them, it's allowing us to address student social emotional needs at the high school, middle school with the addition of a social worker. It's allowing us to reinstate and maintain the middle school world language program. It's allowing us to meet the increased needs of small group math at the middle school. We're improving our L program, as I've said again. But what it's also doing is it's reinstating a lot of the positions that were eliminated in FY21. It's reinstating our out-of-district chair position. It's reinstating part of our payroll position. It's reinstating a full-time district-wide curriculum director, and it's reinstating part of the district athletic user fee contributions that were eliminated during the reductions of FY21. In addition, it's allowing us to address a lot of technology needs across the district, not only security needs, but device needs and updating our Wi-Fi capabilities at the high school and middle school. In addition, this budget is making a pretty good investment in curriculum materials at the elementary level. And lastly, it is supplying iPads for all 7th graders next year, which is new to the district. So those are the big major changes in the base budget. And then in addition to that, because of last year's E&D, it's allowing us to have a real big 1-year robust maintenance program, kind of get ahead of our failing equipment and extend the useful life of a lot of our equipment. And the biggest thing to me, it's allowing us to address our OPEB liability head-on, which is something we should have done 10 years ago. It gets us back in line to where we should be. It makes us comparative to other regional school districts in the area. A lot of the districts already have millions of dollars put away in their OPEB. We have 0 as of today. So just to give you a brief look, nothing has changed since our last presentation. This is just the budget in terms of the DAC view of it. This is the same budget in DESI form, which is, again, mostly what I refer to as, and the budget stakeholders refer to it as the DAC form. So I'm not going to hit on all these numbers because, again, none of them have changed from the last presentation, but just to go over it from the top, we're looking at a gross operating budget of roughly $4.3 million. From there, you take away all of our operating offsets of roughly $2.1 million, leaves a gross operating budget after offset and overlays of roughly $4.1 million. That number carries to the top of this slide. You remove all of our operating funding sources of roughly $7.2 million. Just to point out again, here is our excess and deficiency amount of roughly $3.1 million that was used to fund the OPEB and the maintenance costs. So you take that off the top, and we are left with a net operating budget of roughly $33.6 million, which represents an increase of roughly $857,000 or 2.6%. This is the amount that ultimately gets assessed to the towns as part of our operating budget. When you apply our new assessment formula, 65% for Hamilton and 34% from Wenham, the ending result for our operating side of the budget is an $875,000 increase to Hamilton, which for them represents just above a 4% increase. But for Wenham, we're looking at a little bit of the opposite. It's actually a decrease of roughly $17,000 or 0.15%. So that was the operating side of the house, but with the budget, you have two sides of the budget, your operating and your debt service. These amounts I have here, for the most part, are predetermined years ago. So when we went out for the debt, which is something we're gonna do later on tonight, you know what your principal payments are, you know what your interest payments are. For the bonds, those are the first two items on the list. The next thing is the bands. We know the principal amount for the bands as soon as we create the project. The interest amount is what we learn year to year, which again is what you're gonna vote on later. But in terms of the principal, once these projects are approved, we know what the principal amount's gonna be. So in total, for debt service for FY23, we're looking at a budget of approximately $585,000. It's made up of the 4 projects, the Cutler Roof and Summer of 2013 projects, the Bucher Boiler and Winthrop Glass projects, which I believe was 2016, the Winthrop Sprinkler project, which was FY19, And then finally, the FY21 capital projects that was approved as part of last year's budget. I believe this is the first pay down of that, which is approximately $191,000. So you take both our operating budget and our debt service, you roll them together. This is ultimately what gets assessed to the towns. So in total, the net regional budget to the towns is approximately $34 million, which year over year represents an increase of $867,000, or roughly 2.6%. Again, they don't change very much, but Hamilton is seeing an increase of just over 4%, and Wenham is seeing a decrease of just under 0.1%. So that kind of does it for the budget. At this point, we can go into the motion. The next slide is really just a timeline of what the next month is, and I can stop and take questions before you obviously do anything.
Yeah, let's have any clarifying questions before we have the motion.
Yep.
Anna?
Can you clarify where we ended up with the athletic fees? Was it at the 35% match with retaining the family cap?
Correct.
Okay.
35%, and we maintain the $15,000 scholarship and the roughly $60,000 user.
The family cap. Okay,
Yep.
Thank you.
Michelle Bailey?
I don't know this is probably a question for Stacy, but I also have two other questions, so I'll ask those first. How much is our budget increasing by if we just forget about the OPEB thing? Because I think that throws off the increase in the budget kind of weirdly. Because I'm interested in knowing, like, how much did the budget increase versus the assessment?
So are you talking in gross, not the net? Because if you take it off the net.
In gross, because, well, in both. Because we won't spend, if we didn't spend it and we didn't offset it, like if it was just out of the picture.
Yeah, off the top of my head, I believe the gross is around 6%. That would include the addition of the grants that we had talked about in the first couple of meetings. So if you include that, I believe it's around 6%.
Okay, so we're essentially spending 6% more than this year, and some of that has to do with grant money.
Correct.
So that is one-time money also. In theory, right?
It's not one-time money because those grants we added in are every year grants. We just never reported them as such.
Yeah, we're going to need to figure a way to explain that because.
And the 6% number is off the top of my head doing the math. I'd have to back it out to.
Okay, so then, and maybe Alan addressed this, but on the iPad replacement, if we're doing the iPads when they're in 7th grade, now I am remembering this, you're expecting them to provide their own device by the time they're a junior, because the iPad will be obsolete.
Correct. I think you can.
So what are we going to do for people who don't provide their own device? Are we going to give them a new iPad at that point? Because the iPad potentially will it'll be out of warranty, and it potentially could be obsolete.
It'll be out of warranty in year 3. Our Apple Care, we get an extra year than the average person as a school system. So after year 3, it'll be basically done with the Apple Care. They've been getting about 4 years out of them, some longer, depending on how kids use them. But after that, I think we're going to have to either make them available or put some type of lease in place at that point in time, depending on where the budget is. It's hard to say 4 years from now where that will be. That we may not even be able to continue to fund iPads for a whole grade 2 years from now.
Okay. And then my last question is about the special ed chair. So I'm curious as to what the caseload is for like Maureen and Ryan as compared to this person that's going to work a .6 position, who's apparently going to be around 45 people, or students that they would be.
Yeah, I don't know the answer.
I can't give you an exact number, but we have right now currently there's 300 and, well, October 1 Sims data was 338 special education students sitting in our buildings. We're at 348 right now based on kind of increases. Plus we have 22 private school students that are out there. They may not receive services from us, but we still have to facilitate initial and reeval meetings for them. And those are not the out-of-districts. Those are parent-placed private school students. So between the two of them, they're actively engaged in a caseload of 348 students,
Okay, and so
plus the private schools. And it's split. There's more at the elementary because as we go through secondary, you do have decreases in the population. I could get the exact numbers for you. I just don't have them tonight.
Yeah, I'm just curious as how we determine that we need this person if Maureen and Ryan can each basically handle 150 people, 150 students, 150 meetings. What is the need for the 0.6 person for 45 students?
It all goes down to they're not on location, they're not on site. So part of it is the paperwork and monitoring that comes with the out-of-district placements. It's getting into those placements and observing the students. It's also looking at and all of the data that comes in, the progress reports, the report cards, the data forms that come in. We have some students for their progress reports, which are either quarterly or trimester, that there's a stack for each student to go through and review. Incident reports, lots of things, any health care issues that come up. So there's a lot more to it. No, I'm not negating, because there's a lot that Ryan and Maureen are also doing in district, because part of their responsibility is also collaborating with all of the special education staff and related therapists at their level, and also coordinating and collaborating with general education staff and being in the programs to also monitor our in-district stuff. So it's a lot for our staff.
Okay.
That was it, thanks.
Okay.
Does that answer your question? It used to be a 1.0 position, so we've cut it based on looking at our needs currently. So it's,
But did we ever fill that 1.0 position?
we did. We had a 1.0 position for a year and a half. Was it two?
It might be a year
Two,
and a
maybe 2.5, and then that person left mid-year before COVID, and the position then got cut.
Okay, any other people have questions? Anna?
Stacy, stay there for a second. So, now that you've given a little more detail, would it be accurate to say that those 45 cases of out-of-district placement are most complicated, most challenging? I mean, I think that's sort of what drives someone to go out of district typically, right? So it's not a one-to-one in terms of complexity. My impression would be that out-of-district placements are the most difficult cases we have to work with, right?
They are. They're our students with the most intensive needs that we don't have the ability to support in district. So.
Okay. And then
And there's a lot to it too. It's hard for parents to send their students out of district a lot of times, and so it's really engaging and being a partner with the parent as well. And then you also have to engage with multiple schools.
Mm-hmm. The other thing, I guess, maybe, I don't want to put Maureen on the spot, but I am somewhat horrified by how many, I mean, I knew we had a lot, but that's a lot of cases. I guess I just want to acknowledge that over 300 students divided by 2 people, that's a lot of students with special needs that our coordinators are working with. So number one, that's amazing, given the level of service that you provide. And 2, in moving forward, is there a need to expand at that point? I mean, Maureen seems like a superstar, but could you use a hand, Maureen, in the future?
We're hoping with the 0.6, and we did this with the 1.0, that this 0.6 person will help facilitate some of the meetings, at least at the elementary level.
Wow,
to free up some time.
I think that's important for the public to hear, that if you also think about enrollment, which is right now a little bit less than 1,700 students, we're talking about almost 350 students, which proportionally is, about 20% of the district is receiving some sort of services, and
Or
that.
19.4%.
See, there you go, close to 20. I'm doing Vinny math on top of my head. So I think it's amazing to think that 2 staff members in some way are supporting 20% of the students in the district at a really high level. So trying to give you some public praise to say that's awesome and it's great.
Any other questions for me?
Okay,
Oh, I don't have a question, but should we
Julia.
just reiterate that there will be a public meeting where Eric is explaining the budgets next week at January 19th at the high school?
6:30 at the high school.
Okay, just if the,
the
And a
hearing
public
is
hearing,
when?
right?
The hearing is the 20th, the first,
hearing
the
is the
first.
20th.
the
That's what
first
our
hearing.
slide is, but
Yep,
Yeah.
that's enough, yeah,
high
right.
school meeting on it, but.
Okay, at this point, if we don't have more questions, I'm going to ask Julia to read the motion.
okay. I move that the Hamilton Wenham Regional School Committee approve the tentative FY23 general fund expenditures budget of $41,507,737. This amount includes general fund operating expenses after offsets in the amount of $40,922,462 and general fund debt service expenses in the amount of $585,275. Furthermore, the gross operating expenses of the district before offsets have been allocated by the DESI defined chart of accounts according to the summary by DESI category chart included in this budget presentation as detailed in the exhibit.
Second.
Second by Michelle Bailey. Okay, is there any discussion? Okay, we look ready to vote? Okay, and we need to do a roll call vote. All right, I'll start with you, Jen.
Yes.
Jen, that's a yes?
She said yes.
Yep, okay. David?
Yes.
Julia?
Yes.
Dana's a yes. Michelle?
Yes.
Anna?
Yes.
Michelle?
Yes.
Okay, and the vote is unanimous and the motion passes.
I just want to thank you guys.
Thank you
you.
very much.
I want to say thank you to you.
Yeah.
Thank
No,
you
thanks
for,
to
thank you
us.
both of you for your hard work on this. Okay.
Oh, look at that.
So just to wrap it up and give you a brief timeline of what the next month entails. So tonight we voted on the tentative budget. Tomorrow I will deliver the certified budget that Kevin signs off on to each towns as part of our district agreement. In addition, just to remind you, tomorrow is the quintuple board meeting. This is the all-member meeting with everyone here as well as everyone from the town. And then about a week later, on January 20th, at our next school committee meeting, we'll hold our first public hearing. And then about 6 days after that, we will have our final quintuplet board chairs meeting, which is obviously just the chairs member. And then we will vote on the final budget on February 10th, as well as hold our second public hearing, and then obviously town meeting on April 2nd. So, thank you guys.
Okay, thank you. Okay. All right. Next on the agenda, we have the OPEB, and I believe it's Kevin that's going to present. Is that correct? Okay.
Do have a brief introduction on his OPEB here.
Okay.
While he gets ready. So just to give everyone a brief introduction, we're asking tonight for the approval to use the state's PRIM board as our investment vehicle for our OPEB funds. In addition, this approval will allow Kevin to complete all the required paperwork to actually set up the funds and wire them off to the state. Back in FY18, the district first approved our OPEB fund in the amount of $40,000, but that same year we did not take this step and ultimately did not invest that money, and it fell back to the towns through our E&D process. So this year we're hoping that we do approve this, and this will mean that the current year's FY22 budgeted amount of $100,000 will be able to actually be invested, and this will actually create our OPEB fund. And then any future budgeted amount Whatever the final budget OPEB amount will also flow to this, but it is kind of two separate things. This is to set up the fund, which will ultimately allow us to invest this year's money in it. So I'll leave it up to Kevin now.
Well, Vinny, thank you. I think Vinny kind of summed it up. The purpose of, as you know, the OPEB liability is really large, and the district here really hasn't done anything in the last 10 years to try to cut down on that liability. So it's good to come in here and see that you guys are looking to start that process, at least to work to fund it. Because not only is it important to reduce the liability for future taxpayers, it also helps with bond ratings. So when we go out to bond, especially if there's going to be a school project in the near future, it's going to be important that we are funding this liability and have a significant amount, or not a significant amount, at least working toward it. I would say 8 years ago, when towns and districts started being able to fund an OPEB liability, bonding rating agencies were making sure that funding was starting. Now they want to see that there's actually money going in every year and a good amount in the fund. So again, on that financial end, I think it's extremely important to do it. So it's good to have this process started now. So really the vote here is to set up the fund, approve Chapter 32B, Section 20, which allows us to have an OPEB fund, and then it would be to name myself as custodian and a trustee, the treasurer, so then I can work with the state to get all the documents they need in order for us to invest that first $100,000 that was set aside. And then all future money is all set to go into the PRIT fund as well.
Okay. Thank you. Do we have questions? Okay.
Do I read the whole thing?
Well, I didn't know if you just wanted to mention that we had discussed this at the finance working group and we support this plan.
Yes.
Okay. Julia, do you have a motion?
Do I need to read the entire? From resolved? Okay, just wondered. Okay, I move that we adopt the Hamilton Wenham Regional School District resolution that states, resolved that the Hamilton Wenham Regional School District hereby accepts the provisions of Chapter 32B, Section 20 of the Massachusetts General Laws as amended by Chapter 218, Section 15 of the Acts of 2016, the Act, and establishes an other post-employment benefits liability trust fund, the OPEB fund. That in accordance with the Act, the Hamilton Wenham Regional School District hereby designates the treasurer of the Hamilton Wenham Regional School District to serve as custodians of the OPEB fund, the custodian, that the sum of $100,000 be appropriated as the initial investment into the OPEB fund, that the custodian be designated as trustee of the OPEB fund, and that the treasurer of the Hamilton Wenham Regional School District as custodian of the OPEB fund be and hereby is authorized to execute and deliver the investment agreement with the State Retiree Benefits Trust Fund Board of Trustees on behalf, I'm sorry, like having a hard time breathing.
Wait till you get the bond one.
I know, you're giving me this tonight. On behalf of the Hamilton Wenham Regional School District for the purpose of making the representations and warranties, acknowledgements, and agreements on the part of the Hamilton Wenham Regional School District to be made and performed thereunder.
Second.
Second by David Polito. Is there any discussion? Okay, looks like we're ready to vote. We'll do that by roll call. Michelle Horgan?
Yes.
Anna?
Yes.
Michelle Bailey?
Yes.
Dana's a yes. Julia?
Yes.
David?
Yes.
Jen?
Yes.
And Jen's a yes. Okay, and the vote is unanimous and the motion passes. Okay, thank you very much, Kevin.
Thank you.
Okay. Are you leaving?
Hydration bill.
I know. Okay, next up is the approval of the sale of the bonds, bands. And Kevin, are you going to present something to us?
Yes.
Okay.
So last month, we had a bond anticipation note sale for just over $1.2 million. And Piper Sandler and Company was the winning bidder with a coupon rate of 1.5%. The bid included a premium of $11,415 to reduce the net interest cost to 0.57%. So we got a very good rate. This is year 4 of the 7-year bond anticipation note plan that was approved from authorizations from 2018 and 2020, which Vinny spoke about in his budget presentation. This is just a 1-year note, and every year, probably for, well, hopefully just 3 more times, we'll be issuing these to eventually pay down the debt for these authorizations. So I just ask that you approve this note issue by voting in favor of the vote prepared by bond counsel.
Okay, thank you. Does anyone have any questions?
And what exactly would this be associated with as the project?
That's the Winthrop sprinkler project and the FY21 capital projects, both of them combined.
Say the second one.
The FY21 capital project, so that was the budget with Julie, the security infrastructure,
The
athletic
sidewalks.
feasibility study,
Yeah.
Yep.
and all those.
Okay. All right, I think we're ready for the motion.
I move that the Hamilton Wenham Regional School District approve the sale of the $1,231,400, 1.50% general obligation bond anticipation notes, the notes of the district dated January 20th, 2022, and payable January 19th, 2023 to Piper Sandler and Company at par and accrued interest, if any, plus a premium of $11,415.08.
Second.
Second by Anna. Okay, is there any discussion? Okay, all right, roll call. David Polito?
Yes.
Julia?
Yes.
Dana's a yes. Michelle Bailey?
Yes.
Anna?
Yes.
Michelle Horgan?
Yes.
Jen? Jen is a yes, and it is unanimous, and the motion passes.
And then I keep going.
Yep.
Okay. Do I have to say I move each time? Okay. I move that the Hamilton Wenham Regional School District further vote that in connection with the marketing and sale of the notes, the preparation and distribution of a notice of sale and preliminary official statement dated December 8th, 2021, and a final official statement dated December 16th, 2021, each in such form as may be approved by the district treasurer, be and hereby are ratified, confirmed, approved, and adopted.
Second.
Second by Michelle Horgan. Okay, any discussion? Okay, all right. Michelle Horgan.
Yes.
Anna?
Yes.
Michelle Bailey?
Yes.
Dana's a yes. Julia?
Yes.
David?
Yes.
Jen? And Jen is a yes, and is unanimous, and the motion passes.
I move that the Hamilton Wenham Regional School District vote to authorize and direct the district treasurer to establish post-issuance federal tax compliance procedures in such form as the district treasurer and bond counsel deem sufficient, or if such procedures are currently in place, to review and update said procedures in order to monitor and maintain the tax-exempt status of the notes.
Second.
Second by Anna Seitzek. Okay, any discussion? Okay, David?
Yes.
Julia?
Yes.
Dana's a yes. Michelle Bailey?
Yes.
Anna?
Yes.
Michelle? Jen? Jen is a yes, and that is unanimous, and the motion passes.
Jen, you owe me big time for this. Okay. I move that the Hamilton Wenham Regional School District vote to approve that any certificates or documents relating to the notes, collectively the documents, may be executed in several counterparts, each of which shall be regarded as an original, and all of which shall constitute one and the same document. Delivery of an executed counterpart of a signature page to a document by electronic mail in a PDF file or by other electronic transmission shall be as effective as delivery of a manually executed counterpart signature page to such document, and electronic signatures on any of the documents shall be deemed original signatures for the purposes of the documents, and all matters relating thereto having the same legal effect as original signatures.
Second.
Second by Michelle Horgan. Any discussion? Okay. Michelle?
Yes.
Anna?
Yes.
Michelle?
Yes.
Yes. Julia?
Yes.
David?
Yes.
Jen? Jen is a yes, and it is unanimous, and the motion passes.
Okay. One more.
One more? Okay.
I move that the Hamilton Wenham Regional School District vote to approve that each member of the committee, the district secretary, and the district treasurer be and hereby are authorized to take any and all such actions and execute and deliver such certificates, receipts, or other documents as may be determined by them or any of them to be necessary or convenient to carry into effect the provisions of the foregoing votes.
Second.
Second by Anna Seidzick. All right. David?
Yes.
Julia?
Yes.
Dana's a yes. Michelle?
Yes.
Anna?
Yes.
Michelle?
Yes.
Jen?
Good job.
Jen is a yes. It is unanimous, and the motion passes.
Oh, sure.
Thank you, guys.
Great, thank you. I'm going to just need some signatures from you.
Absolutely,
But in
thank
the future, for future issues, this can all be done with one vote. I spoke with bond counsel, and they said that a few years back, you requested to have it done separately. Do you still want this separately, or just all in one vote?
I'm going to say if it was a few years ago that nobody here knows whether there was a reason why it was done separately. Is that?
I've
Michelle?
never seen this before in all my time.
It just says yays and nays on each of them, so I assume it was.
Yeah,
on the
I
one.
definitely read that last year, all separately. Like,
Oh.
I don't
Yeah,
know.
But it could be easier, and it could be as presented as well, to make it a little easier on you for next year, but
All
we don't
right,
have to put in the
thank you.
yays, nays, and is that okay for next year?
That would be lovely next
Okay.
year. I think we'd all appreciate that.
Okay,
Still
great.
have to read it all, you just only have to vote one.
That lessens your speaking.
But you can do it all
rules.
at once.
I feel like I read it all.
I definitely read the whole thing, but one at a time.
I didn't mind
think.
reading it.
Thank you. All right,
Yeah.
you need my signature?
Read it all.
Before COVID.
Yeah, I think I read it all too.
It also
3 or
like
4
is
years
literally,
ago, yeah.
each one of them is one sentence.
Okay.
And in theory, it has
Can't,
to
like,
be
take a
read
breath.
by the secretary, right? So normally Jen would have,
Signed by the secretary and the chair,
interesting.
but not all, but only one thing has to be signed by the secretary. The chair has to sign a lot of stuff.
Mhm. Thank you, Kevin.
I feel like I'm buying a house.
It is like buying a house, yeah. Because it's way more expensive.
Exactly.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Next up, policy, we're going to, the agenda says that we're going to review the face covering policy. I guess we will, but I think there's a lot of more just COVID information,
Yep.
I think. All right,
Yep.
go ahead.
Yep, thanks. So we do this each meeting, and as you can see, the cases are drastically increased from previous meetings. Even the town cases are way up, but even the school cases, and they're up even higher now. This is data as of 1/5 in this chart. Bucher had 11 cases on 1/5. They're at 27
Oh my gosh.
today. You know, so the high schools was in the 60 range later after 1/5. So these numbers are even higher than what's represented here. This is just what we submitted to the state on the 5th. And then the nurses are currently trying to figure out all the numbers for this week because our pools got delayed. Clearly, we have more pools, so we're doing over 200 pools now because there are fewer people in the pools, so that you don't have to retest
So many
people. So previous pools had as many as 10 people. If that came up positive, all 10 people had to be brought in and retested. So now the state gave permission to reduce the pools to down as low as 2 if we needed to. According to Leah Tabankin, we've been running about 4. And all of the schools have had their pool testing done, except for the Bucher. They're on Thursdays, but so far every single school this week has come up with either 3 or 4 positive pools. So that those numbers will be on top of the numbers that are even higher than these. So the numbers are continuing to rise. A few or less at the high school. There are only 3 pools. 2 of the pools were actually staff pools, and one of them was a student pool. So the other schools, we'll find out Bucher's on Friday morning.
I have a question.
Yep.
If you have COVID, or if you have had it or recovered from it, how long do you have to wait to be included in the pool testing again?
So you can test positive for up to 90 days.
Okay.
In some cases, because of the sensitivity of the test. So if you use, I use myself as an example, take a rapid test, positive, did another one the same day, positive, did another one on day 6, negative. You know, but if I did a PCR, according to our nurses, it would probably come up as still positive.
Yes.
You know, it could still show for some people 30 to 90 days out.
So just to understand Julie's question, so are you asking about, so with so many students being positive, are you saying they would need to wait then, or?
No, I was just more asking out of curiosity.
Yeah.
How long people had to wait, just for my own curiosity.
It's also gonna come up in the reduced number of pools.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right? So as more people test positive that aren't going to enter the pool, like my entire family, right? That just doesn't mean
Yeah.
that, you know, all of a sudden there's less people, you know, participating. Well, you know, they're being withheld for a reason.
Yeah.
They're ineligible. Yeah.
In our case, there are the same amount of people are participating. They reduce the pools just to reduce the load on the
Yeah.
nurses, because not only the nurses have to retest everybody, they also, don't forget, we have a test and stay program. So, you know, before vacation, we had 50-something kids here each morning for 5 days in this room being tested before they could go into school. Plus, then all the pool testing had to be chased out. And we're fortunate to have a number of CIC volunteers, but our nurses are well above and beyond.
Anna?
So based on all this so since we know the numbers are so high, and we know that even though we're reducing the number of people in a pool, to Julia's point and David's point, if we're going to have to then extract back out anyone who's been positive, which based on your rough math is, you know, upwards of 200 students just in the past few weeks, plus more. I mean, we know that's low. So is there a point where the practical viability of doing the pools is going to outstrip our nursing capacity, but also even the number of students who, at that point, in order to participate, you would have to have been negative for, you know, more than 90 days or never have had it, and to have opted into pool testing. And I know that DESE had been not discouraging, I mean, anyone could participate, but they haven't been recommending pool testing for people who are vaccinated. So are we approaching a point where the number of students who realistically are going to be able to participate might be relatively low at some point?
If you look at all the data points that the state gives you, you know, okay, anybody who's unvaccinated doesn't have to participate. They really, I believe they did that to save money on the testing costs. You know, so that was part of their reduction effort. But the bigger piece of it is, yes, you're starting to now, I mean, we saw one last week where a pool came up positive, but it was a kid who had COVID during before vacation, the week before vacation, and forgot to tell the nurse that he had COVID. So, you know, and the nurses are asking the right questions, and they manage. It's quite a process if you haven't seen it. It's pretty paperwork intensive. So,
I just want to. This is probably a good time to bring this up. Really, just thank all the work the nurses are doing. I know that, you know, a very short, very needed winter break, you know, a couple of weeks ago, that I had at least one of the nurses on the phone, you know, calling me just about every day of that break, you know, so it's their vacation too that they work straight through, you know, so you know, my thank you is really nothing in comparison to all the work you do, but, you know, I can't tell you how much I appreciate all of you guys, so.
Hear, hear.
Eric, has the DESE changed their stance on that? Because, you know, most districts, or many districts, had a requirement that teachers be vaccinated, and then they handed out rapid tests to teachers. So have they changed their stance on who should be pool tested?
nope.
Okay.
It's.
So I think we should change our stance on that, because I know personally when there was a little mix-up with our pool testing this week, and I went upstairs instead of being tested in my classroom, and the majority of people being tested were teachers.
Yeah.
So they were vaccinated people. I think we should get the word out that one of the benefits of being in school is you can have a free test every week.
Yeah. And the reality is, we're seeing it, vaccinated people are getting COVID, so.
Yeah.
You know, no one ever said they wouldn't, but I think the initial push, if you go back to when we started pool testing, I think it was about spending money on testing, honestly. I mean, there was no other reason than, you know, all of a sudden, suddenly now all these people who are vaccinated are coming up positive. So, you know, the stance changes. We have a lot of kids and adults who are vaccinated who participate weekly. And,
Yeah.
and our higher numbers are at the elementary school, and we're well into the 60 to 70% range of vaccinations at the elementary school. So it's you know, we're crossing over all over, I guess.
Yeah.
Eric, can you, and I feel like I asked this at some point, have we ever gotten to understand why the DESE put out that guidance initially in like August or September that said they don't necessarily recommend people who are vaccinated participate? Do we know what the medical logic was behind that?
No, I honestly believe it was to save the cost of testing.
That's all.
That's my opinion. I don't have anything that's out there that says it. I just really believe that initially it was, you know, with the vaccines working, you weren't seeing as many breakthrough cases as you did Omicron. You're seeing them all over the place. I mean, it really doesn't matter if you're vaccinated or not.
It would be nice for DESE, 1, to be consistent, 2, to explain their thinking, and 3, to adjust guidance in response to present time. I mean, I just feel like the idea was great and is beautiful, but I'm not quite sure if it's viable, especially if we don't have nursing staff to support it. I mean, it's almost like we're approaching the point of like, if you test positive but nobody can actually follow up on it, okay, great. I mean, it's like the tree in the forest. I mean, we have that many people that are testing positive. It's almost inactionable because of the overload on the staff. So it's.
Yeah.
We're a small district.
I know. Well, some of the larger districts aren't participating. You know, like Beverly, for example, isn't doing pool testing at all. They haven't the whole year. So you know, there are some districts that aren't participating at all. Is Salem participating in pool testing?
Is Lynn is through the roof, like. They are participating?
Yeah. I mean, I cannot divulge the information about COVID, but I can tell you, a lot of people not at school.
No, I'm not talking about cases. I'm saying as a pool testing as a program, some of the larger districts that anticipated higher case counts haven't been pool testing since the beginning of the year. It's not even part of their program. So.
Yeah.
I
Anyway.
have another question.
Yep,
A
Julie.
parent, Ed had messaged me and asked if there's anything that the parents could do to assist the nurses. So, because what we know is the nurses have to deal with, like you said, the 50 test and stays. What if they call, they get a positive test, and then the parent can't come and pick up the child? Like, there's all of this man and woman power needed. So I did not have the answer. I just wanted to present it. I wasn't sure if there's any volunteer opportunities or anything that an interested parent could do to take some of the burden off the nursing staff.
We've been fortunate where the CIC group that we work with has been able to give us enough people to help
Okay.
with the testing. So if you went to the middle school, there were 2 people that you probably don't know doing the testing that are work for CIC basically. So we're actually in a good place. We've also asked the principals to give their secretarial time, their own secretary's time to nurses where they can, release them from whatever paperwork they can do. So there's some regulations that prohibit some of it, but whatever things can do, and we're all, I mean, people are stepping up. Teachers, custodians, custodians are in early to set up all the screens and all the chairs and all, so there's definitely a team effort. I mean, the team is the entire building when you start to get into this messy stage, but I hope next week or the week after we'll start to see this taper out a little bit.
So Eric, I don't know if this is privileged information, but it's been asked, and if it's possible to gather for a future meeting. People are interested in knowing in these testing of the close contacts, how many people are actually testing positive. So I don't know if that's privileged. I don't know if that's information that can be easily sifted out. But I think the question is, we're doing all of these tests and stays. How many of those close contacts that are test and staying are actually becoming positives?
A very small number.
Yeah.
The one they did here, they had 50, I think 3 kids. 1 student was positive that day. It's super precautionary.
Yeah.
But yeah, there hasn't been a ton. I think the middle school, when they did theirs, they were running 46 kids, and I think they had 2 on that first round. And like I said, they pick them off the first round, then there should be none after.
Right,
you hope
exactly.
after that, but.
Right. Okay.
Which just goes to show the mitigation strategies are still working
Yeah.
in the school environment.
Yeah, there's still not school spread. I think that's important for people to know. We're not seeing this tremendous spread across schools. What we're finding out is, outside of school, there's all kinds of things happening. There's still parties and sleepovers and all the things that continue to happen. We can't control that, and what we're fortunate is that parents are, for the most part, heeding our advice to say, if your child is sick, keep them home. And then they'll test them, and then they'll call the nurses and say, yeah, my kid's home because they're sick. So we are very fortunate in that sense that we're seeing more of that activity than kids in school, like whole classrooms going down, even though there may be 6 or 7 kids in a room right now that are down, but many of them are either associated friends or just unassociated that just got it from families.
Well, I mean, we're reviewing the face covering policy right now. I think it's important to, say that it is working, right? The data is supporting it.
Yep.
So we can't reiterate that enough.
Yep.
Okay, all right. Good, we're ready to move on?
Yep.
Okay.
Sure.
Eric, do you have a superintendent
Yep.
report for us?
Yes, please. I gotta go back to the nurses. Just say it again. There are not enough thank yous for the work that they are doing. Nights, days. I mean, on my way here, Leah Tabankin was counting tests. Yesterday, I was at the middle school at 4:40, and people are sitting around waiting for the Buyback tests to be picked up because the company was late. So that they're everywhere and exhausted, and You know, if there was a way in the budget to send them on a vacation, I wish we could, but unfortunately, no. But they are doing more than you can imagine. It's as Dave said, vacation. Many of them were working, chasing cases, following up with parent calls, parent emails. I mean, the first place we tell parents to contact is us. If your kid's sick, let us know. So they do, and you know, I think the nurses have that. They feel obligated to follow up. So really, huge thank you to our nurses, and I will probably repeat that for the rest of the year. But also wanted to thank our staff. Last week was insane for absences and staff outs and things like that. And you know, our staff, we're very lucky. They rose to the occasion, covering classes, doing all the things that were never anticipated to do as a teacher. So it's important to also thank all of our staff for the work that they're doing outside of getting ready for their classes, teaching their classes, and trying to keep their heads on straight during the school day. It is super stressful for our staff, so I want to thank them as well for helping out, and they're helping the nurses and they're helping the custodians, and true team effort. So I just want to let the public know we gave out, just before we came back from vacation, 200 rapid tests. You know, another Department of Education snafu. They were getting tests and weren't getting tests. So during vacation, they were reaching out to superintendents like, "Come get the test. Don't come get the test." So I drove down to the MEMA site in Forge Parkway, behind where the MIA is, and picked up our tests, and then we gave them out on Sunday before vacation, and it was great that 200 people came. You didn't have to come. It wasn't like you were at work. People came on their own and picked up their tests. So, and the number of those tests picked up some positive cases before we came back. So that was perfect for us.
Eric, if I can interrupt, in the spirit of giving people credit, that all happened on New Year's Day, if I'm not mistaken. So while everyone else was celebrating or recovering or doing who knows what, the superintendent drove on New Year's Day to get the test to give to our staff, who then came the next day to get them. So the nurse, you know, the public needs to know that that's what you did on behalf of the district, and the teachers came in and got their tests. So I think it's important. So I just want to say publicly thank you for doing that and making the time and sharing a cute picture of your dog in your Jeep on the way down. So thank you.
My sidekick. Just so people are aware, we mentioned it briefly earlier. Next Wednesday, the 19th, 6:30 at the high school, we're going to do a public budget presentation. Vinny and I will do that. Be about an hour. We'll just go through the budget and answer any questions people have. Just before we have the hearing on Thursday, we thought it was a good opportunity to get something like that out there. And then the final thing, I wanted people to know we are, I am just about done with the process and the timeline for the Cutler principal search, and that will come to this committee, I'm hoping on the 20th, just for your review. And then I'll anticipate getting public feedback from the parents, getting staff feedback, and then building the committee and running through that process, starting, my hope is right after February vacation. I think this year, vacations, everybody's just trying to shut off, so it's not worth advertising before that. So I think right after vacation, we can advertise it and get that process going. And that's it.
Okay, so committee reports, I know that we ended up canceling definitely a policy meeting, and I believe a capital finance meeting also. So I don't know if anybody has reports.
I'll just say that policy was going to meet on Monday, but we're now going to meet next Tuesday, I want to say. But to assure Michelle, I think at the meeting on the 20th, assuming everything goes well, next Tuesday, we will in fact have the flag policy ready for full discussion of the public. We've had 2 or 3 readings, and we've had 2 or 3 reviews by district council, since it is a little tricky. So I just want to let you know, I anticipate we will have that policy, as well as potentially the I section. We've gotten all the way through I, so policy is slowly making its way through the workload that we have. So I do expect to have some things for the 20th.
Okay.
And Capital Finance, we're meeting January 19th.
Yep.
And we had moved our meeting from the 12th, from tonight. Today.
Yep.
And
Sorry
like
about that.
Michelle said, I mean, really, we support the OPEB allocation, and we really support the budget. So that's what we've been discussing.
Excellent. Negotiations, I do have some information, which is that we are meeting on the 19th, Wednesday.
What time?
That's a busy day in the district.
We are meeting at 4 o'clock.
Oh, that's a problem, because that's when capital finance is meeting. No, I'm on both.
Oh, well. Tentatively, we're meeting at 4 o'clock.
We were booked first.
We were booked first.
I do agree, but
Yes, we were booked first. Do we have the custodians are coming to meet as we've meant to do in the fall, and things got sidetracked. So obviously there's some scheduling issues to work out there.
And you have your new look at the election process on your charge now, too.
What was that?
The election review of the agreement.
yeah.
Yeah, we can put that on the agenda as well, yes.
And don't forget about tomorrow night's meeting.
And, yes.
Yes.
Okay, well, so moving right on to the chair's report. We have a meeting tomorrow.
Sorry.
I vote no.
What'd you say?
I vote no. But that's 100% on Zoom tomorrow.
Yes, it is a Zoom meeting, correct. We will all be virtual.
At the request of not us, right?
That was correct. That was, I do not know, but that was not our request. I don't remember who that was. Yeah. Yes, so that is tomorrow night's meeting at, let me just confirm, 7 o'clock. Yeah, and it is the quintuple board, right? That's what we're calling it.
Can I just
Yes, absolutely, Eric.
jump in on your report? Sorry.
Oh, I don't have much.
I think it's important to know that the agenda is that the town of Hamilton will present their budget overview, town of Wenham will present their overview, and then we'll go to discussion.
Okay.
We're not going to re-present because there's nothing that changed for us, so
Okay.
just so people are aware.
Right, and I, yeah, I think that's, everyone knows that. I
Yeah.
think that was at the end of last meeting that was spelled out. Okay. Did I have anything else to say? Oh, I did, this is really just informational, I don't really have any more, but you did all see, I think we did get a demand to bargain, I think that you saw, so that's just informational. I'll be,
Was that today?
that was today, yep.
This afternoon.
So I will be consulting with Eric and with Mark and Dorothy, making sure I know exactly what we should do next with that. But just so you all know. All right, I think that's all for me. Do we have topics for future meetings?
I just have another acknowledgement, but also a question. I think everyone should know that you spent a ton of time last week trying to resolve the website posting, and I think it's important that the public knows Dana spent most of Thursday and Friday, and Superintendent's office trying to get response. So thank you, Dana, for taking that on as our chair. I wanted to confirm the date and time and location. The DEI workshop is Saturday, the 22nd, and is it at district offices or is it here?
We are going to do it in central office.
Okay, it's 9 to noon on the 22nd?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
I'll send out a reminder too.
Okay.
Great.
I would like to know at a future meeting what our anticipated staff absenteeism is going to be on the day before April break, which also happens to be Good Friday.
So I would imagine that's something that you're looking for Eric to be able to provide.
Yeah, because if the staff was going to take that, they should have provided that information to their principals 10 days in advance. Or 10 days from the first day of school. So it should already be a known number.
Okay.
Yeah.
Eric?
We have 3
Right.
that we received.
Okay,
Because I had heard a much bigger number prior to Mary Beth leaving, so,
Yeah, we only actually have 3 in hand.
okay.
okay.
I guess I would
Times
ask-
have changed.
I guess I would ask that you verify that with each principal.
Oh, yeah.
Because there was definitely a different number given to me at that time, earlier.
It's swirling with the superintendent listserv right now, too, so.
Other future topics?
Not right now.
I'm going to just tell you, if I were not the chair, I would request a future topic, which I'm going to sort of think on how I'm going to, or whether I'm going to bring it forward. But to Anna's point about the challenges that we experienced this past week with the website being down, one of the things I learned is that there is no, according to the Attorney General, there is no backup procedure. In theory, according to the Attorney General, if our website had been down forever, we would, in theory, never be able to meet again.
Didn't we physically used to post?
So this is my potential future topic, is that one alternative would be to think about whether we want to consider having our official posting be a bulletin board that I could have walked to and taped a piece of paper up to, which I gladly would have done.
Oh, we used to print out the agenda,
So-
post it on the board.
And we still
Again, I'm
do,
not.
and there's reasons why we changed,
Right,
but this is,
yes.
and I would add to that, that I would recommend that we write a letter, we write a letter to our legislative representatives, let them know what happened and why,
So,
and that we CC that to Maura Healy.
right, well, so I will just, and I do want to just say, I actually spoke directly. Anna actually assisted me, and Anna and I actually stood outside and waited just in case anyone showed up for our meeting on Thursday. And we actually spoke with our representative, Jamie Belcito, who was quite helpful and actually did a really nice job following up with me in getting the Attorney General to respond. Unfortunately, the response was what I just told you, but she did assist us in getting them to respond. So anyway, I don't want to talk too much. I'm just saying that would be a future topic of discussion. I haven't decided exactly when and where, but.
Yeah, but again, in the spirit of credit, she was very responsive and available and tried to help. Representative Belcito tried to help.
But I think we should discuss having a letter sent requesting a change in the law that says something like, if your website is down for 6 days, then.
Right.
Not,
Well,
This is what I said to each person on the phone, that if it had
Yeah.
said, we can't help you until your website has been down number of days, that would have been frustrating, but understandable. David?
Would this be a discussion for the whole committee, or could this go to policy?
That's a great question.
I think somebody soon has to write a letter.
I agree.
Because was it in the Journal? I don't remember if it was in the Journal or the Globe. There's actually, maybe it was on NPR this morning. I can't remember. This is gone. But there was a thing talking about more and more ransomware attacks on schools, the importance of keeping your data safe, blah, 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 blah. So this is not going away. So this could happen again to any service that we subscribe to. So.
Okay, so just because we're really in just topic for future meetings, I hear two, which is potentially changing the official posting location, and
definitely.
second might be discussing whether either the full committee or policy creates a letter outlining our wishes for some better or legal or changes in the law regarding
the law.
official posting. Okay, any other topics for future meetings? Okay. I would take a motion.
I move that we adjourn at 9:39.
Second.
All right, I'm going with second by Michelle Horgan. All those in favor? I think we still have to do a roll call. All right, Jen, let's start with you.
Okay.
Yes.
Jen says yes. David?
Yes.
Julia?
Yes.
Dana's yes. Michelle?
Enthusiastically.
Anna?
Yes.
Michelle?
Jen,
Yes.
Vinny's on it.
All right, and we are adjourned.
We're adjourned.
Thank you, guys.
Bye, Jen. Good night.